Welcome everybody to the platform development update. My name is Balázs, and here we are today with 5 teams of the platform teams, and we are planning this session for about an hour, maybe more, maybe less, depending on your questions and comments and feedback. Feel free to generate a discussion, give us feedback, give us some love or hate. Also, but be aware that we are also human beings, sensible human beings. So feel free to share love, feel free to share your constructive feedback, and keep in mind that if you are not sharing, if you are sharing some, not that constructive feedback or some hate, that will affect us as well. All right, without further ado, I would like to pass it to Sam.
Hello. Excellent. Well, talk about yourself for a human being. I don't think that's great. Okay. Hello, dear community and developers at DCG, or anybody who might be watching this. I'm hoping everybody is having a wonderful holiday. So I'm going to give a quick overview of the situation of the last 2 weeks of Dash platform before we actually get into the development update. This was during the holidays, so there were some people taking time off. There were also some others working around the clock to see how much we could deliver in the last sprint. We made some very good progress. I hope everybody will like it. So there is one thing that's different, is that today we do not have SDK because Igor was helping on the Rust port. 2 developers from the protocol were also all helping on the Rust port. We're kind of in a situation where, like, when you get to the very end, there are dependencies that are very important. Like one thing gets blocked on another thing. And because of this, we put a lot of people on the things that are blocking the main advancement. So a lot of the things in the protocol kind of are blocked or close to, like, we can't really advance on that until the Rust port is done. So we were concentrating a lot of firepower on that Rust port. So I'm saying this a little bit in advance because we go through the things, TenderDash, GroveDB, SDK, protocol, Rust port. You guys are not going to see much in SDK and in protocol. The majority of our effort was, Rust port, GroveDB, and TenderDash. So without further ado, let us start, and I will pass the mic to who's giving TenderDash?
Dima.
Yeah, Dima, you came.
Yeah, hello, everyone. Thank you, Sam, for the report. So, fortunately for us, fortunately for TenderDash, we do not blocked by DPP, and we can continue working on our improvements, fixing the bugs, and implementing the features. Yeah, today is a quick report from TenderDash team. And on the past 2 weeks, we was focusing on stabilizing of our project, and as you can see on the slide, the first effort was related to re-implement of feature which we backported from a TenderMint some time ago, but it was broken because the code base of TenderDash doesn't compatible with the TenderMint, because we removed some stuff which we do not use, and with this PR, with this effort, we just re-implemented how a proposed-based timestamp should work. So basically, we're already done, and this is already merged in our main branch. So second quite big topic was update BLS library. We identified that one part of the code was broken by BLS, and we started to investigate what was the reason. We found that from the last probably half year, the core team contributed a lot in like C++ code and improve BLS library itself. And we just we just synchronize that library and identified some problems because some dependencies was changed. We also had to support it in our CI, in our code base, and currently we're already done, and this PR is already merged in the version of TenderDash, which supported a new version of BLS. Third, quite important and big topic which we're already done is related to seed connectivity. Some time ago, we identified the problem when the seed cannot handle. No, actually, yeah, we have limitation how much peers can handle the seed, and we didn't have a logic which by which seed can disconnect some peers which are already connected, accepted, and handled. Because it's not, doesn't make sense to have kind of permanent connections between seed and peers. We added this logic in order to be able to handle as much as possible peers in the network. And currently we added a few parameters in the configuration which we can tune. Also, we worked on ensure process proposal execute. It's related. Drive team reported us about the problem when during the block execution for the particular height and round, we could execute process proposal ABCI endpoint more than once. And yeah, and we added some extra logic where we can use some conditions which can try to understand, should we call new request, should we send a new request to the ABCI or not? So basically, we had some problems with this implementation, and yeah, we're done, I hope. And the last thing is, yeah, finish working on the improvement of flaky test, which sometimes maybe fail, sometimes might pass. Yeah, this is what about the first part of stabilizing. Second part, which we highlight in kind of another section, investigate deadlocks, is related to the stabilizing as well, but it's more kind of difficult part of this, because working on and identifying the deadlock quite difficult. And a second topic which related to consensus state to fix deadlock is kind of permanent for us, because we're doing a lot of work when we backport some logic from the main branch to another one, because we already refactored a lot, and I hope fixed the most problems there. And finally, we released two versions of TenderDash. The first version with the latest changes, and second one is the same as the previous. So basically, the difference between the V010 and V011, there is no difference, but there is one big one. Is related to the first release is supported only like a legacy approach of bindings, BLS bindings, and second one is focused only on the latest. So I'm done. Thank you for your attention.
All right.
So yeah, so I guess I'll take over for what's left. Yeah, I mean, you just said we don't have much left in TenderDash, but there still are some things to do before we are.
Yeah, I completely forgot to say about a couple of words about the next slide was left before testing phase. Yeah, currently we still have a stabilizing same block execution, but I would rephrase it on stabilizing TenderDash in the future. So, and we still didn't do the work on a just what extension for withdrawal transaction, kind of update BLS. We're already kind of done with this, and proceed node separations already reported about it as well, and drive integration too. So basically, yeah, we're working on stabilizing.
All right, thank you very much. GroveDB.
Before you start, I'd like to give a quick, you can go to the next slide. Balázs. I'd like to give a quick explanation on why there's so much stuff here when, like it was said, okay, we're done with GroveDB. Mostly it's because on the protocol side of things, there was this story called Identity v2. And Identity v2 basically allows very efficient identity information withdrawal. And it required some, how do I put it? It required some functionality in GroveDB that we currently did not have. So we needed to make some advancements in GroveDB to be able to basically do Identity v2 properly. There were ways to maybe finick it and not, for example, when you get back a proof for your identity, it's possible that we could have given like 5 proofs, and then you would kind of like have to verify all 5 for the mobile client, but we didn't want to cut corners. So basically, I mean, not cut corners that are like easily, fixable, right? So these things were not massive, but they did, they were important to be done. And plus it's good for the long-term health of the project to get these things done instead of writing hacks around them. But actually the first one, light proof feature, which Wisdom will talk to you about right now, that was actually the last task in GroveDB that was in review, but it's now done. So Wisdom?
Hey guys, my name is Wisdom from the GroveDB team. So what we worked on, one of the things we worked on was the light proof feature, which would basically allow you compile GroveDB to only verify proofs. So you don't need extra storage features. So this was done, I think, as at last review. It was in progress, but now it has been reviewed and merged in. So that works now. Then we added CI to the GroveDB repo. So on every push and every PR, we basically run a set of checks to make sure that the state of the system is good before merging it into the develop branch. So that was added, and we fixed all the clippy warnings, and made sure that the state of the system is very, very healthy, essentially. We also added a CI test to verify that the verification proof feature compiles correctly on every change to the code base. So that's something that's very important, so that we don't miss some changes. So Sam?
Yeah, sure. And I'm just going to add something very quickly for people who don't know what clippy and linting means. So when you write code, you can write code in multiple different ways that are all valid. But sometimes there's ways to write your code in a more standard way and a more efficient way. And there are analyzers that exist that analyze code, and that will give you basically hints on like, oh, this is a little bit less efficient. This is, there's this to improve here. And generally, if you don't enable linting and if you don't check, you're going to have like, on a big project, you would have thousands of small things to fix. So we had always been kind of keeping it in mind, but we had not we hadn't checked it in months, in all honesty. So we enabled it, and then we found like a few, I think it was less than 100 small issues, and then we fixed all of them. So they're not issues in terms like the code works fine, but it just now, there are absolutely no warnings in GroveDB in the code base from analyzers. So it's perfect. Advanced, so let me give kind of explain what the other ones are. So we have advanced queries for optional non-existent queries. This is actually an interesting one. It's, for example, in Identity v2, you could query different subpaths, and you needed to know which, for example, in your identity, you can have different types of keys. For example, you can have an authentication key, you can have an encryption key, you can have a decryption key, and sometimes your identity might not have this key. So to efficiently know if you have this key or not for DPP, we had to introduce something called optional non-existent queries. We do have non-existent proofs in when it's queried by a user, when there are proofs. However, we didn't have that functionality for the very fast local state. So basically, when you query GroveDB, there are two ways to get information back from it. There's the proved information, which is a little bit more expensive because it has to generate proofs, and it has to and generating proofs is a little bit more expensive. And then there's the really, really quick way, which just goes to storage and gets the data. And your local node does that because your local node really doesn't care about proving the data. It trusts the data it has locally. So because it trusts your data locally, we don't want to have to prove to know that something does not exist. So now you can do non-existence within the very fast option. The next one is remove cousin references. So inside of GroveDB, there are multiple types of elements, we call them. One are subtrees, the other one are items, and the third one are references. So references basically point from one place in your tree structure to another place, and it allows for multiple things like secondary indexes, and later down the line you could actually point between contracts. So for example, you could have a bidirectional reference between one identity and another identity's balance, and then it's able to automatically update. Like, the bidirectional references are a very important thing if we ever want to do more advanced options, like get all the features that a social media platform would need, right? Bidirectional references and all these types of references are very much needed. So the remove cousin reference, it's actually not, we're not removing the cousin reference. It's like a remove cousin, like a first remove, second remove. It's actually like your cousin and then their child, or their cousin and then a path downwards. So it's more efficient than an absolute reference, because since you're at a certain layer of your tree, you don't have to store all the stuff above. It's also more efficient than a sibling reference. So it's just an efficiency gain. It was not a big, it was like an hour worth of work, but I thought it might be interesting to talk about how we're dealing with references. The next one is better delete up tree options. So when when we delete up the tree, okay, so in secondary indexes, when an item is removed, you can delete all the way up while the upward trees in GroveDB are empty. And we just added some extra options to allow for something special in Identity V2. I don't even remember what it was, but it was also a small task. Subquery paths replace subquery keys. Now this one is very interesting. One of the main functionalities in GroveDB is that you basically run a query, and then you get all the elements for that query. And then for every element, you can do a subquery. And before you do your subquery, there's this thing called subquery key, which basically is a translation one path south. And that's actually a very powerful feature, this ability to translate before applying the subquery. I understand that very few people are probably going to understand what I'm saying. The only difference now is that subquery paths replacing subquery keys is that you can do that translation more than one path, one level at a time in GroveDB. And it's really powerful, and it was necessary for something called the better path query merging. The better path query merging is basically that why did we need better path query merging? We had a path query merge, but it didn't handle two things. It didn't handle conditional subqueries, and it didn't handle subqueries. So to handle subqueries and conditional subqueries, when you want to merge two path queries, like for example, things that we're going to be doing in Identity v2, which is, for example, the user wants to get a specific key and the balance for an identity. They'll basically say, okay, give me the identity balance and also this specific key. So the information inside the tree is not close to each other, right? It's completely different. So you have one path query for one item, one path query for another item, but you want to merge these two path queries as one and then pass the query to the system, and then you'll get both elements back. And based off your original path queries, you can actually disassociate the elements, and then you'll be like, okay, this is the balance, this is the key that I'm interested in. But yeah, as I said, to be able to better do that merging, which is required for our Identity v2, we needed to do subquery paths. We needed to do, we're also working on this. So I think we're going to need another day or two for this better path query merge. Identity v2 is the last, I believe, thing that will require updates in GroveDB. I can't think of anything else. Ivan, could you think of anything else? Potentially? I think it's the last thing that might require GroveDB update. So I don't expect, like, as time goes on, that we work more on GroveDB. This was kind of unexpected.
Yeah, in the current scope, I can't think about something else.
Yeah, so not super happy that we had to add all this extra work. That, I mean, just, sometimes you just don't see it. And then when you're working on something else, you're like, oh shit, I need that functionality. I need that functionality. And, you just don't have it. So you have to build it out. Okay, let's, with that, that's, yeah. So basically what's left, all of the original stuff that we said, what's left, everything is done. Like at the moment, we can't think of anything else that's needed. Hopefully in 2 weeks, there won't be anything added because we can't know the unknown. Yeah. Okay, let's go to protocol. You're muted, Ivan.
Cool, great. Oh, thanks. Yeah, Merry Christmas, guys. So let's see what we have for you today. Javid, could you please share the updates on create these roles?
Yay! Hello, everyone. Merry Christmas to everyone as well. So regarding the withdrawals, we had to do a slight optimization by using batches, which I've been doing recently. And boy, oh boy, it took some time. But it's finished, and now we're currently testing the whole thing. And hopefully today we'll be having a set of reviews after this meeting. And that's basically it. Who's next?
I can't promise for today. It's almost midnight at my place.
Oh, yeah, true. Sorry about that.
So, Ivan, I'll talk about Identity v2, or you wanted to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
okay.
Please.
Yeah, so I think I've talked about this in the past, but I'll do it again because it's like really front and center. So Identity v2 was the main thing that I was working on, and then Ivan came in and helped me starting after he finished the credit refunds. The Identity v2 is essential because the way that we were previously dealing with identities in v1, the v1 system, I would say, was never meant to stay, really. It basically, every single time you wanted to make any change to the identity, you had to take the entire identity, change one little thing, and then re-encode it and then push it. And since the identity balance is constantly changing, you didn't want to have to deal with like a big data update every single time. You just want to change the balance. And it would cause a lot of problems if you were even trying, especially that it wasn't compatible with the sum trees that we were working on. The sum trees being a feature that makes sure that the total balances of the system is always verifiable to be constant, meaning that there can't be any inflation bugs in the system. This is very essential for us because everything we do in our system proves the amount of money in the system is constant. Like, so that's like, there can't be any bugs, right? That's one of the tenets. We are very defensive on that. So the Identity V2 supports all this new tech that we had built over the last year, all the GroveDB functionality, and actually needed some extra GroveDB functionality. What's cool in Identity V2 is you can basically query your identity, but only for the information that you care about. So, for example, if you only care about your balance, you just say, hey, what's my balance? You don't have to get everything about your identity. It also gives you back a revision. So like if the revision changed between your mobile client, you can, the revision changed. Oh, okay, then I better get my keys that I care about. Now, so basically, where are we in Identity V2? So the bulk of the work is done. We needed a change so we needed two changes. The first change we needed was, there were a few small things that Ivan found during the review. And there were some big ones too, I guess. And some of them were like, okay, we need this functionality. For example, we need to be able to prove the full Identity V2 to light clients. And what does that mean to be able to prove? We need to have like a very, so we need to be able to prove any query that they care about. So let's say a query comes in and they want to ask you for your balance. They want to ask you for balance, specific key, and your revision, like those three elements. Well, those are three distinct path queries, and they all have to be merged. And that, made us need more work done in GroveDB. So right now, the state is, I would say that there's very little work left on Identity V2, but we need to get the work done on GroveDB to support the functionality that we need to finish Identity V2. I would imagine Identity V2 would be done by the end of the year, probably like in the next 3 days. I just see that like as we're getting close to finishing on GroveDB, but yeah, I mean, it was bigger than I expected just because of the functionality. I mean, that was needed in GroveDB. The majority of the work was probably done up till last week, and then it was like, okay, there's all this stuff, functionality that we still need. The second one is efficient data serialization. So
sorry, Sam, if you don't mind, I will add a few words about the Identity V2.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I think it's a very good example. Also, why we really need it is just so. For example, you have identity and you use like 50 applications, and you have for 3 different keys: encryption, decryption keys for these data contracts for these applications. So in overall, your identity could have 100 keys, for example. And this previous system, every time you do any getting any information and updating all this information, you always getting this 100 keys as well, which is a huge bunch of bulk of information. And it's more like the real life example.
Yeah, you don't want to have to. No, it's good. Like every single time, it's true. In the past, in Identity V1, basically every single time you made any little change, let's say you did any state transition, you would get back your identity balance at the end, you would have to get back every one of your keys. And let's imagine like your identity is 1 megabyte big. It's not a big deal nowadays, 1 megabyte here, 1 megabyte there, but it puts a lot of strain on the system to do that when you don't really need it, right? You don't care about that information. So Identity V2 fixes all of these problems. It's close to being done.
You see me not sleeping, it seems, right?
Yeah, it is interesting because like we had pushed these things to the very end, and we had done it because the system was working with Identity V1, just not in a good way. And now it was a proof of concept. And then after we had everything, we were said, okay, we're going to finish off with Identity V2 and efficient data serialization. And yeah, now we're there. So it does feel pretty good. So efficient data serialization, it was written for Identity. It's just the next thing after. There was no work here. We just keep it in here so people watching can see. So for Identity V2, it's in there, but for the rest, it's not. Credit refunds. Go on, Ivan. Success story.
Yeah, pretty proud of it actually. So we talked about that last sprint review, and basically the idea behind of these words is that you store data and you pay for the storage, and you store this data forever. So the storage fees are distributed into pools, and masternodes getting rewards every epoch for the storing this data, continue storing this data. But now with credit refunds, you can remove your data, remove your documents, what you stored before, and you'll be reimbursed for the credits what you paid to store your document, except the credits which were already distributed. So, for example, if you created a document yesterday, you will probably get the full refund. But if you stored like half of a year ago, you'll get less. But this functionality is pretty vital for the use cases like games, for example, or some applications based on write and delete a lot of data. It's become really cheap for you because you don't need like comparing like the Ethereum or other systems where they don't have a separation between the processing fees, so what you pay for processing your data, and storage fees, what you pay for storing your data. So you in your smart contract, you just add some data and you pay it, and that's it. You can't get it back, your money. But in this case, as we're building more like the storage solution, it really makes sense. So you pay only for what you use, and we figure out pretty efficient mechanism to process refunds. So pretty proud of it. You have something to add, Sam, regarding?
Yeah. Sorry, I was muted. There are a few things. First one is, so let's imagine that you have a poker game. That's just a game. Like you care very much about the data for the last day or so, to maybe you want to analyze it, but you don't care forever, right? You don't want to keep all that information, and you don't want your users playing the poker game to have really expensive costs, or you have a very expensive cost if you're subsidizing it. So basically what the credit refunds does, what Ivan said, but there's one little difference. You always pay for the current epoch. So you always pay for one epoch worth of data, and potentially 2 epochs if you're right at the border, and you want to keep it for like a day. If you're like right at the epoch change, you might have to pay for 2 epochs. But there are 1,000 epochs that represent 50 years of epochs, and each epoch is basically 18 days. So let's say you want to just use like it for a day, then you only want to use the storage and then you remove the storage after a day. Well, you're only going to pay 1/1000th of the storage cost that you would normally pay for non-mutable data. And one extra thing that's important about mutable data is that your contract basically says, is this data mutable or non-mutable? So for example, and actually there's even a parameter that allows you to say, okay, you can remove, but you cannot mutate. So you can actually do a lot of really cool stuff. So you can say like, okay, you can never change the data, but you can delete it, stuff like that. And yeah, so yeah, credit refunds, very cool feature. I'm sure it will allow a lot of applications that just cannot exist on other blockchains, because basically in the end, the fees are going to be astronomically low, because you don't have to pay for, like, let's say you put a megabyte for a day, well, you pay for that megabyte for 18 days instead of forever. So cool. Yeah, let's continue then.
I already want to get my refunds. Kostya, could you help me with the rest of the task, please?
Yes, sure. So let's take a look on them. So the first one, add support for core 18.2. So in this version of core, they changed a bit JSON RPC API. So we have to change -grpc package to support those changes and integrate those changes in platform after that. And so, okay, the second one, log synchronize identities properly. This one is related to logging in Drive. So when we synchronize masternode identities, so it was not clear what happened before. So now we can better handle all these changes, which identities were created, which updated, which removed. So now the information is more clear than it was before. And the last one, remove big elements like TXs from logs. This one is about logging in Drive as well. So before we used to log almost everything, and because of that, logs could be really huge. So we removed TXs from logs because it's not necessary to have everything in logs. So we removed such big data from there because it won't help us to investigate the issues. And I guess that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to the Rust board update. Oh no, what's left?
Thank you.
What's left? Sorry.
Thank you, Kostya. Oh yeah, so we struck through the theory funds today, and still working on the withdrawals. And actually, it's the task what you see right now. It's not the final list of tasks, because some of them depend on the DPP, which in progress still. So it will some additional work when we accomplish the DPP integration, which Anton will cover soon. Regarding state sync, we discussed last time that we, of course, we want to add the as much as possible to our feature set, the things what really we think this is really needed. But during investigation, we found some obstacles, and we probably put this on the pause. We didn't decide yet, right, Sam? So muted, man.
No, I'm not muted. I'm here. Yeah, so like we can't do everything at the same time. So we have to basically do one thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. State sync is a complicated thing that our system will work without it, but it won't. It's not a good idea that we go to mainnet with it. So basically, nobody in the community will see any difference from state sync, and it will be very thankless work. The idea right now is to get everything needed for incubator. So, and for the community to start testing, to make sure everything is working very well, and to push that out as soon as possible. And that will kind of be the final system, right? It will be, and then the state sync. So let me explain really quickly what state sync is for people interested. It allows master nodes that are like after a year, for example, you have all this data block by block that needs to be transferred because there's just, millions of blocks in a year. You don't want to have to go through all of those millions of blocks. Instead, you just want to sync the state of that's important. And there, so we worked heavily on this. The last part of state sync is making it all work together. And with TenderDash, with GroveDB, with with GroveDB, with protocol, it requires everything. And the truth is, it requires, me, Ivan, TenderDash guys. It requires a lot of planning between all the teams, and we're all really deep in our tasks right now. So we basically, state sync is going to be the last thing that we do. Most likely that we will push v24 without state sync, just because, from incubator's perspective, from everybody's perspective, nobody will see a difference because it does not change anything for the overall system on testnet. It literally just is for new nodes coming online. So, and new nodes coming online like after, at least a month or a few weeks of usage. So yeah, it's not great that we're pushing it off, but we have to get one thing accomplished before moving on to the next. As you guys might have seen also in the what's left, there actually is quite a lot, and this hasn't changed that much. And that's because mostly we've put most protocol developers on the Rust DPP update. The big goal for this sprint and next sprint is to get the Rust DPP update integrated into platform and just have that done with. And then basically, since that's done with, everybody will move on to, finishing this protocol stuff. And that will be kind of the last, that will be before the last stuff, and then state sync will be the last stuff. And with that, let's go to Rust port update.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Anton's here. And today I'm going to give you an update on the Rust port, where we concentrate a lot of our efforts right now. So let's start with porting consensus errors framework. We've finally merged it. It was a blocker for a lot of other things. And now all the consensus errors are done. All the validation results and stuff like that we use internally in our backend to verify the data is finally merged. Also, my colleague Evgeny was working on a kind of important part of this whole story, which also was blocking a lot of other things. And that's namely state repository, the code, and the bindings for asynchronous JavaScript code. Because a lot of Rust code we have is going to be used in JavaScript. A lot of our backend is still in JavaScript. And so connecting the asynchronous state repository that is making network calls from the Node.js backend and trying to integrate that code base into Rust was a bit tricky, but Evgeny did a great job doing this. and we finally merged it last sprint. And so we've unblocked a lot of other stuff that were dependent on the state repository. So what state repository is, that is a component of the consensus verification logic that can make network calls, can request data that we might need. Generally, DPP is built a little bit differently from other consensus libraries that are available in the space, in a sense that to simplify the interface of the DPP, most of the consensus libraries, like Bitcoin, for example, they require you as a user to pass the data. For example, if you want to verify a transaction, you have to pass a block. In our case, the interface is simplified, and if you pass in a transaction to the consensus library can request the data from the network on its own via something that's known as a state repository, which is an adapter that can have access to the data, and it can read the data from the disk, from the memory, from the network. You can write adapters in a very universal way and connect it to any other storage of data you can have. And it was quite a task. This was one of the largest unknowns we had so far, to integrate this thing into the library. And as I said, Evgeny done a great job doing that, and we finally merged it and unblocked a lot of other things that were blocked previously. Again, as the slide is saying, we've finalized everything that's related to consensus error. There was a little bit of while we were working on consensus error, we also uncovered there were quite not quite, but there were some bugs in some of the consensus validation code we had before, and we fixed some of the issues in the consensus. We also uncovered how do we integrate better with the rest of the JavaScript ecosystem. We made something like we thought about the mechanism. How do we connect classes to our previous JavaScript classes to our previous consensus error framework, because Rust doesn't have classes or generally classic OOP. So we had to translate that somehow into JavaScript, and we finally made it. That worked pretty well. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you very much. So, as I mentioned, data contract is right now finished. The code, the code for data contracts was separated into several pull requests. We merged all of them except the very last one that is in the review currently. And then the data contract will be finished afterwards. With identity, as I've mentioned before, we merged the state repository code that was blocking Igor from proceeding with the bindings for the validators and things like that. And that's not the case anymore. So we had some progress there. And regarding the document batches, as I mentioned the last time, Pavel was working on a lot of utility code that we haven't worked before regarding the serialization and deserialization. And now we had those kind of three main parts, which is state repository, consensus errors framework, and this kind of the whole serialization thing. And now they're all finally coming together, and document batch transitions would be one of the last things before we actually can move on and fully integrate Rust DPP into the rest of the platform. Hope that clarifies some things. Thank you very much, guys.
Anton, can I ask a quick question just to make it clear for our audience? So
yeah, sure.
For the top-up, update, and batch, once those are finished and integrated, then we don't have anything more to do to integrate into platform, or do we have more?
I don't think we have anything else left. There obviously will be some bugs and some minor
yeah. I mean, then the integration, is a beast in itself. because they're going to be. I mean, we haven't. I mean, there's always something that pops up, right? Like it's rare that everything in code works like on your first go. You do your best, but there's going to be something. Okay, so that's great. Thanks, Anton.
Thank you very much. Is there anything from anybody else from the team?
Yeah, I broke my chair while listening for Anton's great update.
You broke your chair? Is this like
my chair?
Is this a Russian metaphor? Did you actually break your chair?
It's a Russian ritual.
No, it was so surprised, and I'm so glad to hear it. It's like almost fell down.
This is great. For people watching, we started this Rust transition. What was it, like slightly over a year ago? And it was really necessary. It was really, really necessary. So it's really nice that, we're coming to the conclusion very soon of at least for DPP, which is the main, which is, kind of could be considered part of the brain of the system. Okay, cool. So I guess we're moving on to questions, right?
Yes, we are. We are moving on to questions. Just a little bit of clarification why we are having this Q&A session at the end, and why don't we have simultaneous conversation, is because there is some delay, like a 10-15 seconds delay in the streaming. So that's why we can't have a simultaneous conversation or synchronous conversation with the audience. But let's see the chat for the questions. The first one I can find is that, can you estimate how many weeks left before you are feature complete and start of intensive testing? Shiny Bluestone asks.
Sure. It's always hard to estimate these things because we've been terrible in the past. Welcome to any software project pretty much ever. We do internally, we do estimations, and we do we do points for various stories, and these points add up to a certain amount of weeks, and then we give those estimations to our community. So we do our best in a decentralized way to find these estimations, and yet we're always off even when we pad them. The point of these development updates is for people to make their, not just to trust us, but to make their own kind of like look at what's left, look at what we still have to do. You can kind of see where we are and how we're like doing our best to try to tackle all the stuff left and try to implement. I think like a good, after, the last day or two, after kind of analyzing what's left, we can see that like the Rust DPP has to be integrated into platform. That I feel is going to take the majority of the next sprint, especially that some people are off for a few days. So if in 2 weeks from now we have the Rust DPP integrated, that will be the success story there. I do think that in terms of Identity V2, I think that Identity V2 will be done in about 3 days. The GroveDB stuff will be probably done by tomorrow, like the last thing that we needed for the Identity V2. And then we can think about, okay, what's left in the whole integration? As we have the DPP going on, the integration of DPP going on, we'll also have other people working in TenderDash. So I feel like a sprint is enough for the TenderDash work to be finished. We had talked about those withdrawals and being reviewed and integrated. Yvonne said, no, I'm too tired tonight. And that's true. It's midnight for him, it's almost midnight for him. So I think that will happen tomorrow. So then the sorry. Well, hopefully I don't get sick.
Tough topic.
Yeah. so the big bulk of the work is everything you guys saw in the protocol section after the RSDPP is integrated, and that's kind of where we're blocked. So let's imagine that RSDPP takes, I mean, we got estimations internally at about a week. I'm telling to you guys 2 weeks just to pad it up. But it's one of those things that it's really hard to know if it's going to be done in 3 days or if it's going to take 2 weeks. Because, you know, something might always pop up that we didn't think of, right? And that's why it's better to say 2 weeks. And then we have the items in the smaller items in protocol. Those smaller items in protocol, I mean, Ivan, is there anything, can we go to them really quickly?
Yeah, it's not like the huge things, but it's just like several things which are not connected together now.
Balázs, can we go to them? Yeah, here.
And only like integration could help us, you know, to test them out.
Yeah, so like accomplish and test withdrawals. So like withdrawals are technically done. And withdrawals are basically being able to take the wrap dash in platform, which are called credits, and to move them back to the payment chain. So, you know, this is, it's not withdrawals. This is not a major, I don't think this is a major thing. I guess this was withdrawals at the beginning, and then it got, maybe it is major, but we just need to verify that everything works. And we're maybe putting it as major just to be careful, because what happens if something really doesn't work? But at the moment, is there anything that anybody here can think of that could go really wrong? Like,
I mean, the withdrawals, the code is written, but we never had the opportunity to run it because we don't have DPP. So that's the thing to verify, you know, and like make sure it works. So it's not like the, you know, the coding thing mostly. Maybe integrate with fees. The rest, I wouldn't say it's like something important, like big, because it's like asset locks, masternode rewards.
So let's just go
certification.
Let's go. I mean, I think people probably are interested in this. Deal with situation where fees are higher than balance. That's kind of in Identity V2 already. Well, it's not completely in there, but the hooks are needed. So you need Identity V2 before we do this. That's why, like, there's a lot of these things are blocked on something else. Verify fee processing costs. This is just like verification that the whole system works well. It's not a real coding task. I mean, there shouldn't be anything wrong. Asset lock and unlock transactions integration. Yeah, that's so locked on DPP, right? Yeah, so we need DPP first. BLS library Rust binding. We don't have that?
I mean, we're already using it actually. It's just the PR is not like complete. So like we need to add some documentation, some tests. There's more like, you know.
So we're kind of almost done there. We just need to like verify it working. Masternode reward distribution. We don't have that?
No.
Oh,
I mean, we're waiting for core.
But we have the distribution to masternode. Oh, you mean the after
block rewards.
The block reward, yes.
Exactly.
But so basically when the 4K system comes into play, we need to make the change here and actually put credits to masternode operators based off of the system that passed. And the add sum tree feature to pool trees. Well, we actually have an identity v2 for identities. And I think, didn't you do this already?
We have it for pools, I think. It's more, I would rephrase it. It's more like the total credit balance verification each block, more like.
Yeah. So actually you did add the sum trees in the fee refunds. I remember you doing that. And I'm adding the sum trees in the identity stuff, in identity v2. So basically we just need to verify now. Once we have to verify that one minus the other plus the total amount that was ever sent into platform is equal to 0. So it's not a big, I mean, there's nothing like massive here. The biggest thing here is state sync, but we'll, again, most likely we'll ship without state sync, and, you know, we'll do it as a fast follower, right? I mean, it's one of those things that I want to get something out for everybody to use, everybody to test as soon as possible. And, you know, if we can, I mean, if we do like state sync is probably going to take about 2 weeks. So we can probably just do state sync right afterwards and just add it in as a minor release 2 weeks later. I'm sorry, that went way longer than the question probably was meant for, but I hope it gave a pretty good response.
All right, if you would summarize it, how would you summarize? So like my understanding is that the tasks we see ahead of us is estimated for weeks, but we have a lot of uncertainty with the integration and the some unknowns, I would say.
That's basically it. Like a lot of the system works well with thousands of unit tests individually. There's a lot of testing of integration actually already done. Like GroveDB is completely integrated in RS Drive, and RS Drive is pretty well integrated in RSDPP, but it's not how to put it. There's parts, we didn't finish the rewrite into Rust, so there are parts of the code that are still in JavaScript for Drive, and that code might not integrate perfectly with RSDPP, and that's where we might have things that pop up, and it's like impossible to know now, and that's kind of where we're worried. Like, I mean, technically everything should work. We wrote all the tests, but in a week or two, we'll be able to know where we are standing there.
All right. Thank you very much. So let me get back to the questions. I would like to merge 2 questions here. The first one is the identity V2 sounds very useful and awesome. For the testing phase that begins soon, will the SDK tutorials be updated for identity V2?
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Also,
from user perspective, not much will change actually. So it's more like the internal functionality, how we store data, how we transfer the data between SDK and the API. But for the users, for the SDK perspective, you will still work with the same, almost the same entities, like as identity. So you probably won't need to change your application at all.
Well, you don't have to, but you can, right, Ivan? Like you can request identities, less keys, for example. You can say, you know, you can do a specialized, but you can also continue using things the same way it was done before. Just it's not very efficient to do so for your client. we might eventually deprecate that to request the full identity. We're not sure yet.
Also, for the SDK, will credit refund be added as a sample to the tutorials like top-up?
Will credit refunds
will
be added?
credit refunds be added as a sample to the tutorials?
Oh,
Well, it's
Yeah,
not. You don't have to do much to get a credit refund. You just have to delete whatever data you have. So
I guess it just needs to be documented. That's the point.
yeah, you don't have to say, hey, I'd like to get a refund, please. No, you just actually delete your data and you get a refund automatically to. Yeah.
Jeremy, you heard this.
I'm going to tell Jeremy to watch this to make sure he won't.
All right. All right. We have a question that like, why don't you talk to your audience? We would like to talk to our audience. So if you have any question.
So, I mean, he's asking Dash Digital Cash, which is a marketing handle for somebody else. I don't think it's directed to us. I'm not sure exactly.
Oh, okay.
Maybe, well, I'm not sure who. I feel like Dash Digital Cash is the Desert Links, or is it us? One of them is him.
It is us.
Oh, it is us? Okay.
Yes.
Never mind. I thought we were Dash Pay Digital Cash.
Okay.
Two handles that are, anyways, we're trying our best. If it is directed to us, we're trying our best to talk with our audience to give as much updates as possible. People need to be cognizant that, at the same time that we're making these updates, we're also, we're coding a lot, right? We're not, we're like heavily involved in the engineering of the system, in the development in the system. So, sometimes our updates here are going to be very raw, and they're very raw because, yes, we don't put that much time into preparing them, and we're using that time instead to try to get everything out as quick as possible, because I do think that's what people actually, well, some people might prefer better updates over the speed, but we really do want to get this out, and we can work on giving potentially better updates once we've hit mainnet, and hopefully that will be, as we have something out, as we've proved that this whole system works, we're going to get a lot of eyes on us, and at that point, you really want those eyes to see something a lot more refined, a lot more explanation for more actually maybe less tech savvy people. But at the moment, this is really very raw. So I want to apologize for the people who probably might not understand much, but
this is a developer focused update. So talking to the developers, but also talking to anyone who is interested. So we would try to find the balance. The next question is, I assume it is related to or addressed to platform. Are you ready for regulations from SEC and etc.?
Are you ready for regulations from the SEC?
SEC,
so
yeah.
When you say "are you," I'm wondering who you're saying by you. Are you saying to the Dash network? Are you saying to the development branch of Dash, which is DCG and Incubator? Well, at the moment, we can't know unknowns, right? So, and we can't know, like, if the regulation for SEC falls and says, crypto is completely illegal, like, how can you prepare for that, right? You can't. So, I don't think they're going to say that. And since, you can't know in advance what there would be, you can't really prepare for it. And at the same time, probably, right, the SEC, I'm not the best expert here. I must give a warning, but they regulate securities, and Dash is not a security.
I think it's important to point that out. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not the biggest expert here. We could have other people in the board that would be better experts than the CTO. But I don't really think that we need to worry, as Dash is not a security. And Dash is not a security because, there's no entity that's selling Dash, right? It's not, in a lot of the tokens on Ethereum, you have like an IPO or an ICO, and those are securities because the team sells Dash to people, right? There's a centralized entity and they're selling a security. Bitcoin, Dash, they're not securities. Anyways.
All right. Thank you very much. If you have a more specific question, please feel free to ask Alex. So next question. Will you missed be one, which one?
Will you be implementing the 4K Dash?
That's the next question.
Oh, sorry, go on.
Will you be implementing 4K Dash collateral high performance masternode solution now that it has passed?
Well, so there are a few things here. Is that to prove that it was not that hard to do, it was already kind of implemented before. Ivan, sorry. To prove that it was not that hard to do, we kind of had done some of that work in advance, right? Just to say, because there were some detractors who were saying, "Oh, this is going to take forever." Well, no, it's a very simple thing, and it was
you can say in the form of a proof of concept.
Yeah,
we researched that it is possible to do it.
No. It was actually built, in like an hour, and now the only thing that was left. There were two small things left there, is that the voting needed to reflect, your governance vote for a high performance masternode needed to reflect 4 votes instead of 1 at a time for that type of node. And there was something around the database where, types were not handled perfectly. So those 2 things needed to be done, but it's very, there's very little work left there.
Thank you very much. Also from Alex, Dash team, please tell me what you're doing to make your project more popular and why investors as me should buy Dash.
Sure.
Sam?
So there are multiple avenues that a team can go forward on to build something for people, right? We've seen that in various different projects. You have projects like, I would say, Bitcoin that focus on stability. You have projects like Ethereum that focus on innovation. You have projects like Dogecoin, which focus on being very popular. There's not much in it. I don't want to say something mean to that project, but it's just their focus is popular and maybe good vibes. And you have you have various different projects. You have projects like Litecoin, I would say, that are kind of focusing not on heavy development, but mostly on taking things that Bitcoin has and trying to release them a little bit earlier, or maybe more experimental things. Dash has gone the road of innovation. That's what we're trying to do as best we can to bring new functionality that does not exist anywhere else. We're not trying to copy another system. We're trying to bring something out that's new, that's novel. The idea for these things have been around for quite some time, but they were just very hard. And, not many projects go that route. Most projects, go the more easy route because they have somebody not very technical at the top, and they just say, okay, I want this out in, a month or two. And yeah, corners are always cut. And then you come up with either very centralized systems, or you come up with systems that promise one thing, but they don't actually do it. They cut corners. But yeah, then there are some good projects, out there. I would say that if, some people are going to kill me for saying this, but I would say that Ethereum is a good project. The problem with Ethereum, though, is that the fees are extremely high. And, there's also a lot of other, I would say there are quite a few issues with Ethereum, especially like we saw around their data storage, right? The data storage in Ethereum is very expensive, right? You want to, and that's not something that you want to do when you try to have millions, if not billions of users. So we're trying to create a system that works better for, mobile clients, for integration into people's everyday lives, and not for, a cream elite of developers who want to do blockchain just because it's, in vogue, right? We want to build something that people will use because it's better than the existing system. So,
all right. Thank you very much. Also, if you go to the Dash Discord and take a look at dash.org, you will see more information on our approach and what we are doing. Thanks also for following these updates. So next question is, as Dash project is all open source, what protection does Dash have that some other project copies all the software and becomes more popular than Dash? Do you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll take it. I like these.
Yeah. Please.
I hope people don't dislike my voice too much. Okay, so why doesn't this happen everywhere, right? So you had there's this project called Bytecoin. Probably nobody has ever heard of it. It's a perfect copy of Bitcoin, but nobody uses it. Why? Because consensus comes around the project that is able to maintain the code base. If Bitcoin hadn't existed and Bytecoin had a bug, well, the developers of Bytecoin would never be able to resolve the bug. The consensus is what's really important. Where is the development happening? Where is the project thriving? If somebody made a complete copy of Dash platform, there would be a few things that wouldn't work well. The first thing that wouldn't work well is that, our development team knows the code very well. Other development teams will not. Even though our code is very readable, it is not easy for anybody to go into a new code base without months of effort and guidance. So it would be very hard for them. And we are open source. GroveDB, for example, right? Our GroveDB solution, I hope that it's used by other projects in blockchain. Why do I hope that? Is because I hope that more people come in and help the whole space grow for that, for GroveDB, right? And and TenderDash eventually as well. We might rename it and package it as so TenderDash basically works instead of something called practical Byzantine fault tolerance. It uses a model called scalable Byzantine fault tolerance, which uses threshold cryptography to generate very efficient proofs. Now, it is, as far as I know, the second implementation of a SBF team model. Maybe the first. I'm not sure which one came out first. So the point is, like some of these components that we're using, it would not be a bad thing that other projects use them. But overall, I do not think that another project will just take our code and supplant us. Why? Because, well, who would actually follow that project if it didn't have the people behind it that are able to make updates to the project?
Yeah, and not just the update, I believe also the masternode network we have. So you would need like thousands of to have this security, to have people who are securing the network. You would need like thousands of people. I mean, at least.
Yeah, and then you also need a clear distribution, because if you just create a network out of nowhere without proof of work, so Dash is proof of work, but you needed to mint all those coins over time. Hopefully, as best we can, decentralize their distribution done through proof of work, and that all is a massive undertaking needing multiple years. So, yes, a project could copy the code base and do it all, but they would definitely cut corners. And those corners being cut probably would lead to, heavy problems in their project. I don't think.
Actually, it's already copied a few times. I mean, platform, but we can see that it was copied and renamed, but it's just a dead repository. It's no updates there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, people do that all the time.
Yeah, I do believe that eventually, when we release, there are going to be, hundreds of copies, right? Or thousands. There are going to be a lot of new projects that stum up just basically using our tech. Maybe one or two will have some short-lived, fame, just like you can see it in many projects that go up really quickly, right? Well, I don't know if we're going to go up really quickly, but if we do, then, there are going to be copycats. But so what? Doesn't really matter.
All right, I see that others are also giving similar arguments that we have. So I'm looking for another question, and also asking you guys if you can see other questions. All right.
Somebody told me to take emergency C, vitamin C, B6, and B12. I have them all next to me.
Anyone else noticed how most of our devs are Bob Carroll linked community? What's Bob Carrolling means?
Bob Carroll was our ex CTO, but where is that question? Or what is it again? Can you say that?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what that even means. I know that people had criticized Bob for not really talking to community that much, but I mean, we are here right now. So that's already quite different, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have these development updates back in that day. it takes a lot of time to be on Discord or various other places, and when we're working quite hard to deliver these features, it's hard to tell, like it's hard for me to instruct our devs, say, oh, your feature that you're like been working on for the last few days, like tirelessly, stop doing that and go talk with people. It's, everybody can go and talk with people, but the focus right now is really doing our best to get this out as quick as possible. And yeah, that's basically the reason why you don't see a lot of people out there, I guess.
All right. Is there anything else? Any more question you would like to answer? I guess this was a very long development update, unusually long. Thank you everybody for coming and having these conversations, giving us a lot of feedback, not only regarding the developments, but also some technical ones. So I'm trying to tweak the streaming software as well to show bigger pictures while we are presenting. Next time, if nothing else, then see you in 2 weeks. Thank you very much. See you guys.
Happy New Year.